We're here at TechEd 2012 Europe. I'm here with Jeffrey Snover, lead architect for Windows Server 2012, and that amazed me because yesterday I ran into him and I asked him about PowerShell, of course. I wanted to talk to you about PowerShell.
Right.
And then you told me, well, I can tell you something about 2012 as well. So what does a lead architect do then?
Yeah, so let's see. So we've got a number of just superstar architects who are focused in on particular areas, right? Storage, network, etc. And then as a lead architect, my job is to take a look across the entire area and make sure that we're executing in a coherent way, that we have a clear vision, a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, and then we can break it down into deliverable tasks. So I look across the areas.
So you know a little bit of everything. Or you know actually a lot about everything.
I'm responsible for a lot of everything.
But how come that the PowerShell guy, which is into management, gets now this overview all of a sudden? Is that because Windows Server 2012 is a lot of PowerShell?
Well, certainly, we are making a transition from an operating system for a single OS, an operating system for a single server, into a cloud operating system. A cloud operating system that runs across lots of servers, storage, networking, PDUs, all that's glop required to make it run together to be a cloud service. And management's certainly a critical part of that. But fundamentally, it's more than just management. They were looking for somebody to come and lead
those guys.
Yeah, lead. Yeah.
The superstar architects.
I don't know about that.
But they need some leading at least then.
Yeah.
And then, but then still, what does an operating system has to go through to become a cloud-based operating system? Is that a big difference?
Sure. So if you see right now, most of the cloud solutions are really bolt-ons. They say, well, I'm going to leave the operating system alone, and then I'll bolt something on and bolt something on. And that works to a degree, but honestly, you can do just a ton better by refactoring, by being able to control the entire stack. And so that's what we're doing. We're making transformational changes at each layer of the stack. So it's not just a bolt-on and a compensation for the flaws of a single OS server.
So does that mean that the under the hood part of Windows dramatically changed in 2012?
Well, the way I like to say it is, this shift to the cloud OS is not a single, release thing.
No.
It is a journey. And so we've made the change. That is now our primary focus, and then step by step we'll get better and better. But it really affected our investments in virtualization, our investments in networking, our investments in storage, and clearly our investments in management. Let me just give you an example. So, 20 plus years ago, Microsoft formed together with the other people in the industry to produce the hardware abstraction layer, right?
Yeah.
The hardware abstraction layer is a set of standards that allow, that abstract the hardware of a PC, the devices of a PC. This is the unsung hero of the x86 architecture, right? Because it's the thing that allows everyone, a wide variety of choices from, laptops to desktops to even server machines now, and the surety that everything just works. I mean, when was the last time that you thought, well, I'd like to buy that desktop machine, but I'm not sure Windows will run on it? No, you just know it's going to run. And XP, you just know XP is going to run on it. And why? And the answer is because there's a certain level of standardization known as the HAL. So now when we say, okay, that's great, but now we're a cloud operating system. Well, now the hardware that we need to turn into a compute platform is the data center itself. And so now we're building the data center abstraction layer, or the DAL. And so this,
oh, cool.
DAL. And so we now leverage, instead of pursuing a proprietary approach or starting from scratch, we can leverage standards-based management. So those are the DMTF standards, SIM, and WS-MAN. Yeah. And that's why we made such a huge investment in this release. If you call it WMI, it's standards-based management, but really we had not kept up to speed with the latest standards, and fundamentally we had DCOM as the primary management protocol, and that's not the standard protocol. So in this release we switched, we brought all of our stuff up to the latest standards, and now WS-MAN, the standard protocol, is the primary way you manage all of Windows. And DCOM's there for backward compatibility, but WS-MAN's there. So that's an example of the shift.
Yeah.
from a single OS to a cloud OS.
And that's why, for example, in Surf 2012, you can actually very easy create applications that run on different servers right from the server manager. That's one of the results of that.
Yeah, that's the other thing we did was
Yeah.
to shift focus, to
Yeah.
have server manager instead of I manage that machine or that machine or that machine. We say, hey, we're going to manage these machines.
Yeah.
It's also behind our push to say, hey, get the GUI off of the server. I don't know if you saw that, but now
You
our
can
preferred-
uninstall it.
You can uninstall it, and it is our recommendation that you run with server core.
Okay, but a lot of people don't get server core that well, so they want to have a UI.
Sure.
Right? The
And,
GUI.
yeah, and we love GUIs. Just run it on the client and run server core on the server. And so, definitely people have tried to use server core and have some difficulties. We thought about this long and hard before we felt comfortable to say, no, we think you can succeed with it. The basic idea is that one, you had to have good GUI management remotely. And we have that. Two is when you were on the machine and you had to do management, you had to full coverage. And in the previous versions, you had like 230 commandlets, and now you got upwards of 2,400 commandlets.
Whoa.
Yeah, huge increase in PowerShell
Built-in
coverage.
already.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so if you ever need to get there, things you're going to be able to do are going to be easy. And then the third was there was a set of roles that were not available. We refactored most of the roles that now run on Server Core, and we worked with the products. So SQL Server now runs in Server Core.
Oh, nice.
Very important.
Yep.
And then lastly, I forgot what lastly was. But anyway, no, so we did this. Oh, of course, most importantly is we took the risk out of it. In the past, if you did Server Core and it turns out something you needed required a GUI, you had to throw that away and start over and write full server. And now you can go with Server Core, you can go to full server and back and forth. And the reason we did that was it turned out as we made this push, we tested some third-party products, and it turned out that many of them ran fine on Server Core, but they required a GUI for installation. So what you're able to do is you're able to install it with a full GUI, and then take away the GUI and run it at Server Core. Then, of course, what this does is it minimizes your security footprint, your resource footprint, and sort of most importantly, your patch footprint.
Reboots.
Exactly.
Less reboots. Yeah. Oh, that's. So you actually so in the future people will install Windows Server 2012 with GUI, configure everything they like, and then remove the GUI.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
then
that's
do
it.
remote management.
And then
You'll still have the
Windows
GUI.
client will have everything in it by default, or you still need to do the RSAT stuff.
RSAT, yes,
RSAT,
the Remote
yeah.
Server Administration Toolkit. And there, again, we think this, and this is part of being the kind of lead architect, is like think it all out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in the past, RSAT was always a trailing thing. We'd release the OS, and then sometime in the future, we'd release RSAT. But here we said, wait, we're saying this is going to be on by default, Server Core by default. So we're going to have to release that simultaneously. So let's put together the program and the plan to deliver it simultaneously.
Well, that's some changes we get to see then.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
Huh? And but because we're moving to the cloud, you probably deal a lot with Azure team as well.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah.
A bit.
Yeah.
And then, for example, I saw that in Server Manager you can actually manage online and offline machines. That's on-premise and online machines.
Yeah, so you
From
can
the same UI.
Yeah, so we can't manage Azure proper, right? But you can like when now Azure has the VM role, the IIS roles, and if that's a Windows Server 2012 instance, Server Manager will be able to manage that. So that's good.
Yeah, nice.
And in addition, now Server Manager, I like to say that in the past we were an OS for a server and its devices, and that as a cloud OS, we're an OS for lots of servers and all the devices, whether they're physical or virtual, online or on-premises or off-premises. So what that means is when I can use Server Manager to install a role on a remote server, I can also install it on a VHD. In fact, the demo I did the other day, again, being standards-based, I had a demo of Linux, a Linux machine, installing Windows Server roles.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and if I wanted to, I could have installed that Windows Server role from Linux, talk to a Windows Server, and install a role into a VHD. do
and
that
then make that bootable and everything.
exactly.
Ah, that's so.
So that's what
Oh,
standards-based
that's a
management
geeky
is.
demo.
And by the way, did you hear? So the standards-based management. So part of the way we drive that throughout the industry is to help the industry partners adopt that. In the past, there's been open source implementations, but honestly, they've been problematic. And so we invested in an open source implementation of WMI called OMI. WMI is the Windows Management Infrastructure.
Yeah.
We produced an open source version called Open Management Infrastructure, and this week I announced its availability. We're working with the Open Group and making that source code available as of this week. And in the talk,
And that means, what can we do with it then? What is the possibilities we have? Because now we get now we're getting there, right?
you might have heard of this company called Cisco.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Cisco and another company called Arista have now ported OMI to their network switches, and we're working with them to define the standard schema so that they can manage Cisco switches and Arista switches using standards-based management. And so my demo, I showed how using exactly the same protocol and tools, I can manage a raw server, no OS on it. I can manage Windows, and I can manage the switch connecting the server.
So in the future, we are able to easily deploy an entire network with everything in there.
Yeah,
Just
using the same tools. And this is that first step on this data center abstraction layer, or the DAL.
DAL. That's something new. The DAL, data center abstraction layer.
Yeah,
it's not
pretty
DLL
exciting.
anymore, right?
Exactly.
Is it? It's something different.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah. But then, what happened to PowerShell and your role in PowerShell? Because
Yeah, so,
you changed jobs,
I did.
and we walk around here, we hear PowerShell everywhere.
Yeah.
So is your job finished now, or is PowerShell still
Well,
under
I still
construction?
stay involved in PowerShell, but certainly not to the degree to which I was. But no, we had a great PowerShell release. First is we worked with the standards-based management team to say, hey, if you implement these standards and you implement them a certain way, PowerShell will be able to reflect against those objects and auto-generate the commandlets. So we now ship with 2,400 plus commandlets. About half of those were implemented in this way. And now here's the thing.
Auto-generated commandlet, so it's just, that's smart.
Oh,
Saves you a lot of work.
It saves a lot of work. And now we can go to these vendors like Cisco and Arista and anyone else who takes OMI, and we can say, hey, if you implement these standards and you implement them with this extra metadata, PowerShell will be able to reflect against that and generate commandlets for you too. So it doesn't just work for Windows, it works for anything that implements standards-based management. Now here's the key. Imagine you're one of these companies, and I come to you and I say, hey, I'm not asking you to do anything proprietary, just implement the standard. And then add a little bit of extra information. You're like, okay, well, so I implement the standard, and then everybody gets to consume my standard. And I said, yeah, in addition to that, if you do this, every single Windows box will be able to point at your box and generate high-level task-oriented abstractions, PowerShell commandlets for free. All the Windows boxes. And guess what? You don't have to put any code on the Windows box. You don't have to test. When a new version of Windows comes out, you don't have to port your code and test it and make sure it works. We do that work for you.
Awesome.
Exactly.
So
it is a compelling
cool.
value proposition.
Yeah.
And so you asked me what my role is. It's kind of thinking through all those steps. Where do we want to be? Who needs to do what to get there? What are the incremental steps that we have to do to get there? That's what I do. And it's
And you got a lot of cool ideas, I heard. Very cool. So the next version of PowerShell, PowerShell 3, is that coming
Version
up?
3, yeah, exactly.
Is that part of 2012 server?
It is, and then we backported as always. Backported to Windows Server 2008 R2, Windows Server 2008, and Windows 7. Yeah. And boy, we adopted the dynamic language runtime. That's the .NET DLR, which means do you remember the Java Hotspot Compiler? No. Okay. Well, in the Java world, Java got fast. Java used to be very slow, and Java got fast with this Hotspot compiler. Basically, what it does is it monitors the execution of the program, and then it'll do on-the-fly compilation. That's what we do now. So we monitor the execution of a PowerShell script, and the hotspots we compile to native code and execute them and fly like the wind. Very fast.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
We simplified the language. We now have IntelliSense in PowerShell ISE.
Oh,
crazy.
Thank
It's
you.
beautiful. We have something called show command, which is a little bit ironic, but basically it's a GUI front end to command line interfaces so that you can then see all the parameters, makes it easy to fill out. And then
You are
of
making
course,
so much people so happy with this, right?
they
You know,
are. They love it. It makes it. You know, a lot of people, honestly. Some of you on the audience, I know, probably tried PowerShell, heard PowerShell, power, and gave it a try and said, "Ouch!" You know, that was a little bit tough. Now, actually, honestly, a bunch of advanced scripters saw that and said, "Oh, I love a challenge," and they did great. They just loved it. But a lot of people just want to get their job done, and they heard this promise of, "Think about what you want, type it, and get it." And in reality, in the previous version, there were 230 things, 230 commandlets that we shipped. So that means there were 230 things that you could think, type, and get. And
now
after
it's
that,
2400.
now it's 2400. After that, you then had to go program and script. You had to script way too early. And so a lot of IT pros looked at that and said, "Oh, this is too hard." Well, now there's 2400 things that you can think, type, get, and
then see what happens.
they can succeed. Yeah.
So, and then finally, 2 years ago, we had this talk too, and you told me that the most active PowerShell community was in the VMware world.
Yeah.
Is that still?
No,
Is it still on?
No, they're still very, very active. But indeed, some of the hypervisor communities, Link, Exchange, they're all getting very active. In fact, the Link
VMM,
guys,
of course.
of course, yeah. The Link guys, they were a fantastic partner in this release. We also added workflow capabilities. So we took a workflow engine, Windows Workflow, and we incorporated it into PowerShell. And so what that means is in the past you could write function and then have a bunch of commands. Now you can write workflow and have those bunch of commands, and we will hand that off to the workflow engine for execution. And this is very important in a cloud operating system where you want to perform operations against a lot of machines and across time. Okay?
Yeah.
So the Link guys were fantastic. They're doing Link Online, and they use PowerShell workflow to run their entire Link Online service. And so they were very vigorous around, hey, it needs to do this, it needs to do that. So when people pick up PowerShell version 3 and use the workflow features, they can be assured that this has been battle tested. You know, the Link guys really bashed it and stressed it and gave us fantastic feedback, which of course then we responded to. So, yeah.
Whoa, that's really awesome. You have to realize that this guy changes your life. Really, because it's the way PowerShell involves everything now. Right?
Actually,
it's everywhere. And
it's the engineers who make all the code. I just give them hints.
So one final thing.
And I find the smart guys. Here's my real role. My real goal is to find the smart guys and
Have them do the
encourage
work.
them. Well, no, encourage them. Yes,
Yeah.
go. What about this? What about that? And then when they get it, then I help build support for their ideas. You know, I got a very simple model. They do not pay me to come up with the best ideas. They pay me to ship the best ideas, and I will get them from anywhere. And we have fantastic people with fantastic ideas, and my job is to try and find them and say, well, that one, not so much. This, what about this, and this? And then, great. Hey, everybody, this guy's got it. Let's do that. So, you know, honestly, cheerleader, supporter, capital venture, that sort of thing.
Well, thank you again. It was a great pleasure.
Excellent.
And hope to see you next time in TechEd.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.